We're streaming live for all the New England Patriot fans here today.
Oh, gross.
Yeah. Headlines in NFL. John Harbaugh signs a 5-year deal with the New York Football Giants. So that is now official. The Titans are reportedly of hiring Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for the 49ers. The Dolphins hired defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley as their head coach, and they're pairing him up with the new GM for the Dolphins, who both came from the Packers. Surprisingly, the Buffalo Bills fired Sean McDermott after 9 years, which suggests some internal friction in that franchise, which was really surprising after, taking the Buffalo Bills out of that drought they were in for the playoffs and really turned that franchise around. And it wasn't like Sean McDermott made all those mistakes on the field, the game against the Broncos, but nonetheless, he is gone in Buffalo. So as we head into the championship round for the NFC AFC, we have some really good matchups there, which we'll talk about later. But in Cowboys news, Joe, obviously we've been talking about it last week about obviously Eberflus is now out of the building. He's gone. We do not have to talk about him again. But who will replace Matt Eberflus as a defensive coordinator for the Cowboys? And there's some names that are now floating around that they are interviewing, and the Cowboys have requested permission to talk to. So Deontay Jones is a Minnesota Vikings pass game coordinator for DB coach. The Cowboys have asked to talk to him. Jonathan Gannon has still been floating around there. He's the former Cardinals head coach. Christian Parker, Philadelphia Eagles pass game coordinator and DB's coach, is also a guy on the list. And the dark horse that we mentioned last week that we talked about was Jim Leonard, the Denver Broncos defensive pass game coordinator. He's been in the college scene for a long time, but now he's with the Denver Broncos, and he's the guy that even the 103 the fans have been talking about as being a possible candidate to be our new defensive coordinator, which is not a sexy name. It's just maybe a guy that nobody really knows about at this point. But what do you think, Joe? Do you still have hopes that maybe Brian Flores might be enticed to come over to Dallas, or any other names that you've heard? These are the ones that I've just kind of heard this past couple weeks.
I think the Flores hope is going to be gone. I think he's going to get a head coaching job. There's so many opportunities out there for a head coach right now, and Flores coming from Miami at one time, being a head coach, and obviously things didn't work out there. He goes over to Minnesota. He proves himself again. And I think his name is floating around to be a head coach. I don't know if he'd want to even come to Dallas.
I saw that he's a former head coach for the Raiders. His son was the coach of the Titans. Callahan. Yeah, he got fired from the Titans. His son. They were both on that team earlier this season. But Jeff Hafley would have been great. But let me ask you this question, Joe? What if? Because McDermott is a defensive coordinator, former defensive coordinator. What if we got him? That could be pretty cool.
There was a lot of weird things, and we're only getting half the story. I mean, I'd like to talk about McDermott for a minute, because I think you are right. I mean, this is a guy that's proven. This is a guy that gave everything to Buffalo Mafia, whatever they call themselves. I mean, how do they let a guy like that go? It's almost as if maybe McDermott was involved with the ownership and indicating maybe it's time for a change. Maybe he wanted to walk away, similar to Tomlin, because I think that was an agreement with Mike Tomlin as well.
This is kind of like, we haven't had this for a while, having these many openings that need to be filled. Obviously, McDermott's a strong head coaching candidate, but if he went back to the defensive coordinator side of the ball, I mean, I think he'd be great for Dallas. He can definitely scheme a defense. I mean, the Buffalo Bills, when he took them over, was like ranked almost last in defense. And in the 9 years he's been there, they have always a pretty good defense. McDaniels is a great example of that. When he went to the Broncos, failed, went to the Raiders, failed, came back to the Patriots like 3 or 4 times to be their offensive coordinator, and is very successful. Obviously changed Drake May's game this season. But another thing is what's kind of crazy is that Raheem Morris, right? So he gets fired from Atlanta, and he's obviously a great defensive coordinator. He came from the 49ers system. With Saleh going to the Titans, it sounds like, I mean, you would just assume that Raheem Morris would go back to the 49ers and take over that defensive coordinator role, as now it's an opening, right? But the thing with Raheem Morris is that he had 2 years in Atlanta. I don't think they did that bad. They had some really bad quarterback controversy with Cousins and Penix Jr. Yeah. So I don't
Yeah,
really
I'm
blame head
more
coaches for these things.
I'm more interested in what you brought up about Saleh. Him, and he's another one. Like that's what piques my interest more. Really, like to the top of the list. I mean, this is a guy where he was completely a failure, and I understand it was the Aaron Rodgers.
Jets.
Like within 30 seconds, he ripped his Achilles.
Not the firing,
The
but the
filling of a
filling.
position
the
or the
hiring.
firing of. I mean, we talked about McDermott for sure.
McDermott's the biggest, obviously, but we talked about it already. I think the biggest surprise to me for a hiring, there's two. Kevin Stefanski getting another chance in the NFL right now. I thought he'd go back to an offensive coordinator role before he become a head coach, but Atlanta firing Raheem Morris to bring in Kevin Stefanski to play Baker Mayfield twice a year, the quarterback that he threw away. After that was the quarterback that got the Browns to the playoffs in the divisional round against the Chiefs and lost. And the other one was the guy from the Dolphins. I mean, I just never thought the Dolphins would go in that direction, hiring a no-name defensive coach, especially with the turmoil over there with Tua and that offensive being so bad. But I just never thought, like, again, that he would be a guy that he's a no-name. Nobody knew this guy is. Like, only that GM they hired and in the Miami Dolphins hired the Packers assistant GM. He's the only person that knew about this defensive coordinator. So I just never thought Jeff Hafley would be a name we're going to be talking about in the NFL news.